The Elder Scrolls Online has yet another update. The Deadlands right around the corner, and you're wondering what the S tier PvP class is. It's the Stamina Dragonknight, and now I'm going to break down the changes and talk about what I've been using that's super effective now and will be incredible in the next update. I'm also going to share with you my loadout I'm currently using and what I'll be running at the start of next patch, so stay tuned. Stamina Dragoknights, you gotta see this to believe it. The Deadlands has been in testing for weeks with a plethora of Stam DK changes, and I'm going to explain and highlight these changes and how it'll affect your build. Let's start with itemization changes unrelated to Stamina Dragonknight, and that's item trait charge change. The charge trait, this is increasing the potency of the trait, currently at 220%. But next patch, it'll be at 480%. That is a mind-boggling increase. If you don't know much about the charge trait, it gives you increased chance to apply status effect. The most important status effect as it relates to Dragoknights are burning, flame damage over time for 4 seconds, and ticks every 2 seconds. This gets a chance to proc from flame damage, more relevant for magic Dragoknights. Poison, or poison damage over time for 6 seconds, chance to proc from any poison damage. This is extra important to the Dragonknight due to the Combustion passive, which also got an increase in resource sustain. Currently on live server, Combustion does the following: increase the damage of your burning, poison, and status effects by 50%, and when you apply a burning to an enemy, restore 500 magic. When you apply poison to an enemy, you restore 500 stamina. Next patch, Combustion will increase to 1000 magicka and/or stamina and will be able to occur every half second. The charge trait change directly feeds in your sustain loop, making poison and fire damage, giving back resources drastically. Okay, Deltia, this sounds great, but why would I give up the Sharpened trait in PvP for charge? Wouldn't I lose a ton of damage? Well, no. Reason being is Dragonknight has one of the most busted overtuned ultimates in the game, Corrosive Armor. When you pop Corrosive Armor for a limited amount of time, you're going to limit incoming damage to 3% of your overall max health, deal AoE poison damage, and you're going to ignore physical resistances and spell resistance 100%, cutting through armor like butter. Let me say this again: ignore or bypass physical and spell resistances. So yes, for a short window, you'll be very hard to kill with 100% penetration, thus making charge trait optimal during this window rather than Sharpened, which will give you zero benefit. Moreover, that's why as Stamina Dragonknight, you can switch to dual or 2H swords for your primary front bar weapon, because if you use maces, you'll be losing effectiveness during the corrosive armor window, and you'll really want to center your damage around that corrosive window. Even if the 3% cap increased damage wasn't strong enough, or 100 penetration, the fact that it does AoE poison damage as well is utterly insane, so building around this ultimate, not take flight, is the way to go. Speaking of ultimate, the Battleroar Passive got an absolute monster upgrade. Currently, the Battleroar Passive on live server restores resources when you cast an ultimate. 46 health, magic, and stamina for each point of ultimate cost. Ultimate cost is the key word here, meaning on the live server currently, if you use a take flight at 110 ultimate, but you actually have 500 ultimate in your pool, you're only going to get 110 ultimate worth of resources. However, now with the upcoming changes, Battleroar not only gives a little more resources, 50 health, magic, and stamina, but it's per ultimate consumed, not the cost. The same scenario here with the 500 ultimate take flight in your pool will now give, well, 50 times 500 to all 3 resources. An absolute incredible difference. This alone will increase your Stamina Dragoknight's effectiveness dramatically, because you can really time that clutch leap or corrosive armor, and it's like a 3 times tripod to keep you in the fight. To further expand on this point, you can use item sets and potions to increase the ultimate game further. You can cast Earth and Heart abilities when you have extra magic for the Mountain's Blessing passive. You can use a 2-piece monster helm like Bloodspawn to ramp up the ultimate generation when taking damage. You can even use the Nord Race, which has its own built-in ultimate generation via the passive Stalwart. You can use a back bar sets like Daedric Trickery that can proc major heroism, and you can get minor heroism for, well, heroism potions. And you're starting to see why and how the Stamina Dragonknight will be so strong. Oh, we're not done yet. World and Ruin passive was changed from AoE flame attack increased damage done to flame and poisons by 5%, giving you even more damage with those skills. And one of the strongest abilities within Ardent Flame skill line, Inferno, now both morphs will grant weapon or spell critical. Carterized morph heals extremely strong even on a stamina build due to the way it scales. However, on live server, it only gives spell crit, which is kind of meh. Now this morph will give both spell and weapon critical, and the other morph, Flames of Oblivion, which is very strong, giving both crit chances, will now give 3 fireballs instead of 2, making it even stronger. So how I use the Carterize on my back bar currently, and what it's going to work even better, is having a 2H using Rally for a big burst heal. Putting Carterize back there with giving me an extra chant for weapon critical, meaning big crit rally heals are much more likely, keeping me much more survivable. And then lastly, Dragonknight Whip has been changed. No, it's not a stamina whip, but it scales off of your highest offensive stat. Power Lash, the morph that costs magic, heals and has been reworked to instant heal, no cooldowns. You can spam cast it, while as Molten Whip, Seething Fury, now lasts up to 10 seconds per stack. This allows you to build up for 3 stacks for a super hard-hitting whip, but uses magic as a cost. Me personally, I use too much magic on my stamina DK for armor buffs, Carterize, and Fossilize, but then there sure is a place for the whip even on a stamina DK. In PvE, I was testing this and getting 40k critical hit with 3 stacks and not optimal gear. And that's the other thing about the Dragonknight, the Stam Dragonknight, you're not pigeonholed into the exact same playstyle everyone runs. There are super top tier players out there using a 2H and Sword and Shield, while other players do dual wield and a 2H back bar, and heck, even some bows out there. It's the one stamina build you can play in so many different ways and be incredible, survivability and damage. So now that I got you sold on that, let me kind of run through my build, what I'm using and why, and how you can tap this to the next patch. Let's talk about gear first. Some of the item sets we've already talked about, but Blood Spawn obtained in Spindle Clutch 2, it's going to give you more resistances and more ultimate. This makes sense. It's going to feed into our sustain loop. The extra resistances when you get hit is really nice. More sustain equals more damage because you're ultimate corrosive and you just want to live in there. If you can live inside corrosive, you're going to be super survivable. The next set up is going to be Daedric Trickery. We also talked about this. 8 trait craftable in Morrowind. This gives us the overall best survivability for back bar when maintaining high mobility and burst potential. Usually you're going to proc this by casting your armor buff, which is also AoE, and keeping this up a lot of the time is very easy. All 5 buffs are very useful, and especially heroism. Next setup is Plague Break. This is god tier on a Stam DK. What it's going to do is a very strong damage over time effect, but it's also going to proc an extra explosion if someone cleanses. This is incredible in group or solo play. The single target dot pressure alone, the way the DK works with disease, poison damage, is good. Now ramp this up, and if someone uses cleanse, typically thinking of a Templar Extended Ritual or the Alliance War cleanse, but also the Netch from the Warden, also the Necro using Expunge and Modify. If people hit this, I've seen 3/4 health bars drop, just like Hrothgar, and it's absolutely incredible damage. Single target AoE in a group solo, and I can't get over it, because what's the one counter to Stam DK? Well, if I load you up with 6 or 7 dots, it's obviously to cleanse, right? No. You do not want to do that against Plague Break. It's super strong. So you're going to want to run on your front bar Plague Break 2 weapons charged with a poison and a fire, because that charge trait is going to proc the resource sustain frequently. On this specific build, you do want a fire enchant on there because you are using a lot of magic. Carterize, Volatile Armor, Fossilize, which we'll get to in a little bit. It's constant, and you want to maintain that magic up because you can use both resource pool, stamina, magicka to heal. And then that leaves a one piece trainee you can use. That's specifically just for max stats with the one piece. And then on the jewelry, I run Wild Hunt. Death Dealer's Fate gives you overall more max stats, which is nice, but I feel the extra mobility from Wild Hunt with 2 traits, Swift, make up for anything Death Dealers could provide. And then I like all impenetrable traits, with chest being reinforced in heavy. 2 heavy, 5 medium. Prismatic glyphs on the head, chest, and legs with stamina on the rest. And then 1 stamina recovery glyph on an infused mythic wild hunt makes it really, really strong resource sustain. Now, on the skills, I go with dual wield and 2H. The primary reason I go for dual wield is the passive called Ruffian. The Ruffian passive from dual wield is going to give you 15% damage bonus when attacking a stunned, immobilized, disorient, or silenced enemies. The number 1 skill on our front bar is going to be Fossilized. This cannot be ignored, you can't block it, it's just a really painful stun. The advantage of Fossilized in this morph is when you stun them, even if you break free quickly, what's going to happen is you're still going to be immobilized, activating this Ruffian passive. So if you're going to use Leap on someone, typically you load them up with dots, put a Fossilize on them, and then hit them with the Leap afterwards. Depending on their skill level, they shouldn't be able to break free and dodge roll out of it, allowing you to hit extremely, extremely hard. So unless someone breaks free quickly, they're going to be dead, especially with those damage over time effects ramping up. Then I have 2 damage over time effects. One is Venomous Claw. This is your low-cost, hard-hitting ultimate single target pressure. The benefit of Venomous Claw is it's just insane damage that ramps up over time. So this isn't something you want to recast if possible. You really want this to allow to ramp up because the damage will be more impactful the longer it goes. Noxious Breath is our other one that we pair with it. It's going to give major breach, reducing physical and spell resistance. It's going to hit really hard poison, and it's AoE. So you can dot everybody up in front of you in a cone and start proccing that Plague Break. And then I have Camo Hunter on my bar. This is kind of a flex skill. It's anti-ganker, and it's something you can slot, making the build much simpler. You can counter gankers, you get increased weapon damage, and you get ultimate when you kill someone with the Fighter's Guild ability slotted on your bar. So if you're getting killing blows, you're gonna feed that ultimate even more. So make sure you max out Fighter's Guild and you get the Banish the Wicked passive. It's super impactful with 1 Fighter's Guild ability in your bar. And then I have good old Chop 'em down, mow 'em like grass, Whirling Blaze. This is an AoE damage, single target, and execute. Can be used as a main spammable. And typically I'm spending my global cooldowns casting my damage over time effects then a stun, and usually 1 or 2 Whirling Blades will finish them off. Take Flight is the ultimate that I'm using. It's one of the hardest hitting, most fun abilities in the game. Acts as a gap closer, though we have a lot of speed and mobility anyway, so you don't necessarily need to use that. This is really good for bursting down a large group or 1 target. However, I try to rely on corrosive armor more because the harder the competition gets, the more I need survivability when I jump in there to do damage. So I do use this ultimate, but I rely on corrosive more. Bar 2 is a 2-handed, and what I use it for is Rally for the burst heal and buffs. The first ability on our bar is Volatile Armor. This is an armor buff that does damage in AoE. It's incredible damage. So you'll have a bunch of dots, but what I'll do is when I'm closing the distance and I get up close to someone, bang, I'll pop Volatile Armor. It's also really useful as a magic ability that can get people out of stealth. So if you have a pesky Nightblade stealth right away on top of you, if you hit this, it'll knock them out typically. Next ability up is Rally. This is the weapon damage buff with a burst heal if you recast it. The trick to having Rally is make sure it's up all the time, but recast it 5 seconds or less for a really big burst heal. You're talking 7,000 to 8,000, especially the crits. Shuffle is up next. This is major evasion and mobility tool, especially with dark convergence being out there. The grapefruits are everywhere. You're going to need to basically get out of dodge quickly, and this is how I do it. So the major evasion AoE damage reduction is useful in and of itself, but being able to move out of immobilization snares is priceless, and I love this on my bar. Next ability up is Carterize, which I already talked about. It scales very well for stamina builds. It costs magic, but it heals you or an ally. So it's actually a good group utility tool, and casting it, spam casting it. So you can cast it over and over and over, and what it's going to do is fire out that healing about every 5 seconds. So if you cast it over and over and over, and you have a bunch of magic, it'll just sit there and heal you or someone else over and over and over. That's quite useful because if you're running low on stamina and you can't do a Resolving Vigor, feel free to spam Carterize as a substitute that costs magic, kind of like how I play the Warden with Arched Blast. It fits really well. Next ability up is Resolving Vigor, just a simple burst heal over time, pairs very well with Carterize to make really, really strong healing. Along with Rally, we have 3 really strong heals on our back bar. And then we talked about already, Corrosive Armor. It's a defensive ultimate that gives you 100% penetration and does AoE poison damage. There's some clips of me using this in PvP. I'm literally cutting down the entire team with this, making it revolve around ultimate gain, revolve around resource sustain. Just phenomenal skill. Okay, that looks good. What race would I be and why if I started this? Well, I think I've already answered that question. That's the Nord. It's very well balanced, but really the ultimate generation via the Stalwart passive is exactly what you want on a DK. Yes, you will lose a little bit of damage compared to maybe a Dummer or an Orc, but overall, the resource sustain via this passive feeding into us along with Blood Spawn and all the other tricks and bells and whistles makes us just incredible survivable. Consumables, what I use is Artanium takeaway broth, so I do like that food. I don't necessarily have a large max magic pool because I'm using abilities enough. Plus, when we switch the charge trait with the flame enchant on our front bar, we should be able to regenerate magicka quickly. Moreover, you're going to be using Battleroar using ultimates, and you're going to get magicka back that way along with tri-potions. Speaking of tri-potions, that's what I keep on me because we're going to be needing them for all 3 resource pools, and it's nice and very handy for a burst heal. The Mundus Stone of choice is the Warrior. It's all around the best because it affects our damage in healing. The weapon damage is quite nice, and the higher we get, right around 5,500 with this specific loadout, and with about 2,000 or so stamina recover, we're very strong. Attribute points. Typically, I stack a lot of max health, but the way this DK works is it doesn't really benefit like the Warden for max health or like the Templar for max health. So I keep right around 30,000 health or so, typically is what I'd recommend. And then if you're a newer player, I would go a lot higher, but you will do much better with lower max health on this particular build. And then for the champion points, I go really heavy and defensive, so you can obviously slot this out depending on what you want. I take 3 defensive ones in the warfare tree: Duelist Rebuff, Ironclad, and Unassailable. With 1 offensive one, you can either go Master of Arms, or you can go with Thaumaturge, damage over time effects. Experiment with it, but I like the 3 damage reduction ones. It makes me very survivable. For the fitness tree, I go with the Celerity, increased movement speed, expert evasion, sustained by suffering, and pain's refuge. For the green tree, I go Treasure Hunter, Rationer, Liquid Efficiency, and Steed's Blessing. And that's really an updated build on why the Stam DK is going to be so powerful, kind of how you can use it and adapt it to your playstyle, but experiment with what works best for you. I love the dual wield 2H playstyle, but I know a lot of really good players using 2H in Sword and Shield. Find what works best for you, but just realize the Stamina Dragonknight will be one of the strongest classes in the game, if not the best in PvP overall. So I appreciate you watching this video. Consider becoming a Patreon to continue to support my channel. Watch on Twitch TV if you want to see these builds live to see if they actually work. Also hit that like and subscribe button, and please consider turning alerts on so you don't miss another video. Thanks for watching.